Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Mind Movement Health podcast. I'm your host, Kate Boyle, and today I have a very special guest on the show, Katie Hardie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. We love to talk about health and wellness, nutrition and movement on the podcast. But today we're going to dive into what I think is a really important topic for everyone, but especially women as they're kind of in that midlife stage, and that is inflammation. And then around that sort of idea of, what healthy food is and real wellness is, because I think there's a big movement right now and it's sometimes really confusing for people.
Yes.
Now, before we dive in, can you introduce yourself to our listeners? Just share anything that you would, think that they should know about you and, some things about your professional or personal life that kind of embodies you.
Sure. Well, I have a background originally from strength and conditioning and then kind of layered in nutrition, culinary school, wellness coaching, and then functional labs, kind of understanding what's going on inside a person's body through blood, urine, stool, saliva. And I've always had an interest in performance and health and just kind of putting it together now that we get a little bit older, maybe more of that longevity aspect to it. And even though I was always interested in it, I didn't follow it. So a lot of what I've learned has been from either following the wrong rules really hard or just learning from mistakes. So just because you may not do something now doesn't mean you can't be doing it. And I think I'm living proof of that, you learn. It's always a learning opportunity. And that's how we grow and become our next best version of us.
Well, I love that because it is a constant evolving, isn't it? Like when I studied nutrition at university 20 years ago now, it was all about, going low fat and, higher carb and all the rest of it. And now, we know from studies and science that it needs to be completely flipped around.
Oh, you're preaching my language. Yes, I 100% agree.
Now, I want to kind of dive in straight away and talk about inflammation because there may be people listening in that have heard of this term inflammation but don't know what it is. So, can you share a little bit about what inflammation is and why we should, care about it?
For sure, yes. I think a lot of times people probably think of it maybe in terms of like joints being inflamed, or I think with COVID, people maybe started hearing about the cytokine storm and the inflammatory response. And I think that kind of helps people understand the immune system tie into it. But essentially, it's a state of stress or something that our body isn't liking, oftentimes involving the immune system, where we have this response that creates the redness or the heat or whatever it is in response to a perceived threat, whether that threat's real or not. And so, how we can see it in our environment from a food standpoint is with leaky gut or an overly permeable gut. So, when the tight junctions that should be pretty much closed kind of open or stay open too long to allow toxins out, they're also allowing the external environment in to kind of be exposed to our bloodstream where our immune cells are. So this is where people can get into um, a tricky situation with quote unquote healthy foods. So like salmon or avocado, you name your vegetable, your protein, something that I think most people can agree is generally good for you. But if your immune system is perceiving that neutral or even potentially positive thing as a negative or a threat, it will react with that response, that inflammatory response. And that response is the damaging part. And that's where you get all these immune cells like releasing mediators and histamine and doing the things to protect your body from this. But if you are doing this, salmon, the avocado every single day in an attempt to support your body, but your immune system doesn't like it, that can be inflammation. And that's kind of where not all healthy food is great for our bodies because it's how our specific body responds to the threat or perceived threat.
Mm. And that might be like a light bulb moment for sort of some people listening in because how could a healthy food not be healthy for our body? Like, how does that work? But if
Yeah.
somebody is kind of listening in and it has just been like, whoa, that's a light bulb moment. How do people work out then which foods may be causing that inflammation and may not be sort of agreeing with them, and then which ones are all right to leave in?
hmm So, from a testing standpoint, if you want to get into the acute or immediate stressors, you can do a food sensitivity test that involves a blood draw. I will say, yes, it does show you what your body's responding to, or the immune system, the white blood cells are overly responsive to. And if you only swap those foods out for new ones and you don't address what's upstream, the leaky gut, you're going to do exactly that, swap one food sensitivity for another. So, kind of getting upstream, or, in front of that, through the things that cause that hyperpermeable or chronically permeable gut, leaky gut, as we call it, which would be chronic stress, gluten in the way that we do it. I'm not sure what your version of it's like over there in Europe. It's a lot different than ours because it's more in that original state that it was intended to be, that our immune systems tend to recognize. But alcohol, sugars, those are some of the typical stressors, if you will, that cause that gut to be a little overly permeable. It should go back and forth, but it shouldn't just stay open all the time. So when that situation's happening, that's what can downstream lead to those food sensitivities, where then people are like, oh, I get a headache after I have, my lunch every day, or my joints feel a little stiff, or I have this extra weight around the midsection that just won't come off. It's really stubborn, or just weight in general on the body, or brain fog, having a hard time sleeping. They'll feel those symptoms. And so, yes, the immediate band-aid, if you will, is temporarily removing those items, the foods, the additives, the triggers that are causing that immune system to be overly responsive. And simultaneously, you also want to seal the gut, and work on those lifestyle shifts, so we're not creating a situation that allows for that overly permeable gut, and not really fixing the issue, but perpetuating it, so the new foods we rotate in become the new problem.
Mm. And if someone's listening in and they're like, oh, that maybe sounds like me. I'm having some of those symptoms. Maybe it's, bloating, constipation, headaches, as you were sort of saying. And I probably need to look at how to fix my gut. Where's the best place for them to start? Should they kind of do a bit of an evaluation and go, do I have a lot of stress going on? Should I start here? What's my sleep like? What do you recommend that, is a great place to start?
Well, it depends how much people want to take on with support or do on their own. I think it's always most efficient to find somebody who can serve as, support and accountability for you, and kind of, expedite that process. It's why athletes hire coaches, conditioning coaches, skills coaches. Like, you want somebody to guide you. And there are also things that universally we can all adopt too, such as creating margins in our day, or space where we can just be. We're like really hyper focused, and I'm saying this because I experienced it and still battle with it myself. Is, in this constant state of being busy, and not just and like doing things, checking the boxes, versus just being. And so something like that can help activate the parasympathetic, or the rest and digest calming side of the nervous system, versus being in this perpetual state of fight or flight or sympathetic nervous system. So that's one thing where, you can't control the stressors that come at you, but you can always control your response to it. And just not overscheduling our days, having time, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, bookending the day with kind of a little more natural, slower transitions, getting outside in the sunlight to help promote, good circadian rhythms. So catching sunrise and or sunset, things like that. Sitting and reading for 6 minutes can be all it needs to take to kind of shift nervous system states. Breathing, all these things are free. And I think, we have so much, a knowledge out there. It's not necessarily a lack of knowing what to do, it's actually doing the thing to do. And so oftentimes that is putting it in your calendar. And that's where working with somebody can be a valuable resource to have that accountability. Because, you know how it is if, you sign up for your Pilates class and you've paid for it, you will probably show up. But if you just kind of tell yourself, like, oh yeah, I'll probably wake up and probably feel like it, something probably will also come up and be a new barrier that like kind of diverts your attention from that thought you do it last night and then in the morning it just doesn't happen. So those are some places you can start, from like the stress management piece is just creating a little more space for you and not just doing things.
Mm. Well, I agree because even as a Pilates instructor, I have a Pilates instructor and I do a weekly class, and people are often like, "Why would you do that? You know what you're doing." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm exactly like everybody else. I do my own workouts, but I'll do the
Mhm.
exercises that I like doing in my own workouts. And if I do a hard one, I will do like 6 or 8 reps, not 12 to 15. That my instructor will make me do. So exactly, that follow through, seeing that progression, seeing it happen quicker, it all really helps having that accountability. So if you can, work with someone, I 100% agree, you will get results a lot quicker. And also they will give you a different perspective, from your expertise,
Mhm.
whether it's the, functional testing that you do, that sort of stuff you can't do yourself. But it can give you a lot deeper insights into things that you need to work on.
Yes, because people have been trained for years on something that you probably haven't. So to kind of help speed up or minimize the gap, for you gaining that knowledge. And then, like you said, they have that perspective. They can see you from a little bit different angle than you can see yourself. Because when you're the fish in water, it's hard to really sometimes see that you're in water until you leave it and come back, or just have somebody help kind of guide you and direct you based upon what they know is out there and what they see you can be doing.
Mm. And when it comes to sort of, if someone's gone, yes, I really want to work on my inflammation and I'm going to start making some food swaps and I'm going to start working with somebody, how long does it sort of take for someone to see some changes happening in their bodies?
Yeah, it's if there's something they're highly reactive to as far as food that they're eating on a regular basis, they're gonna notice it pretty immediately within probably a day, 3 days, because when you eat the thing that's causing that flare up, you're gonna feel it within 30 minutes to up to 3 days. So you kind of unwind that, by removing it and swapping something else, and then that kind of gives your body that reprieve. And because you might not have noticed the symptoms the first time you had it, is more of that cumulative effect, like death by a million paper cuts, right? It's, if it didn't happen overnight, it's not going to unwind in the exact same overnight place. It could take weeks, months to get it below surface level where, think of an iceberg. Um, if those are symptoms, there's symptoms stacking up. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not doing damage beneath the surface. So the immediate sense of relief can happen pretty quickly. And there's going to be all that under the surface work to continue doing. So you're not in that bad spot with one exposure to it or something equivalent, if that makes sense.
Yep. And when it comes to, say, foods and inflammation, are there some general foods that really tend to trigger inflammation?
Yeah. The ones I see having the biggest impact would be sugars and, in any form, like real sugar, fake sugar, just processed carbohydrates that create that sugar-like response. Alcohol, for a lot of people, dairy, and again, it's kind of like the gluten thing. Gluten's in that category. It's not that there's something inherently wrong with dairy or gluten. It's what we've done to it to modify it from its original state. And so the quality really does matter. But I do, encourage people to at least temporarily remove it just so they have an awareness of what their body feels like without it, because so many people are like, I'm fine with gluten, I don't have any issues with it. I'm like, just humor me, try it for like a month. And when they do, and then I'm like, okay, now let's play with it and like see how your body responds. Like, I guess I do get a headache 30 minutes later, I just never noticed because I'm always sitting in the headache. Or yeah, I do get bloat or gas, and like those are symptoms that we normalize. And just because everybody else is having them doesn't mean you want to have it too. Like, I think a headache's annoying. I don't want to be bloated. But, you see so many ads for things that are like, oh, yeah, yeah, when you have this, take this, suggesting that it's totally okay and normal to have these things, not really providing an alternative that you actually don't have to settle for that. You can totally live life in a very different, smoother way. That doesn't seem to be the alternative provided. So I like to have people just learn this awareness about their body and what it can handle. Because some people can do well with a high quality dairy or full fat or European style or organic, like finding the right type, but also the right amount and frequency. Because maybe for somebody it's once a quarter, and I'll just have this, for the special event, and it fills my, cup for satisfying like that, like treat, but then it doesn't give me the face breakout or the gas or the blow or the IBS or the headache, whatever the thing is. And other people might find it's just not worth it. And some, once you kind of give your body a chance to heal, seal, and repair, all of a sudden the eggs, because that's a common one that bothers people, once you have a break from it and kind of work on the gut, they actually go back to eggs on a pretty routine basis or whatever, fill in the blank. And they're like, wow, that's so weird. I can eat this without it upsetting my stomach. Like, yes, because you're having that inflammatory response from that permeable gut, to a lot of things that should be neutral or actually perceived positively, but they're not, because your body's kind of in this chronic state of stress. And so it just wants to fight everything. And so I think it's really helpful to have those periods of time to take a break from them. Not that it needs to be hardcore 24/7 going on. It just gives your body a little reprieve so it can tolerate more things. And then also, I think we're in such a all or none way of thinking where I'm either going to have pizza every single night or I'm never ever going to have it again, or, whatever the item is. And it's like, well, the goal is to get where your body can handle most things occasionally, but you also don't need to eat it all the time. Like, when we do like birthday parties, especially when the kids are younger, it's just like literally every single one. It's like pizza, juice boxes, cake, it's the same thing. Like, why is that the default? Like, why can't we do carnitas or like, potato bar, just something different? But this special thing is after the soccer game, at the birthday party, for Friday night dinner, for, it becomes every single day. So um the conversation isn't, is this thing good or bad? It's, well, how frequently? And, if it becomes the norm to do it every day, that's a very different impact on your body than occasionally. And
Hmm.
so the answers could be very nuanced.
Yeah, well, it's all about finding that balance, isn't it? And,
Hmm.
as you said, like my balance for me, speaking on the eggs, in my second pregnancy, I started not to tolerate eggs very well and then realized that my immune system had been suppressing an egg allergy that then all changed during pregnancy. And for, years after having my second daughter, I still couldn't tolerate eggs, but I can tolerate eggs now perfectly fine. So, a little bit different
Interesting.
to analogy as such, but I still had issues going on there. But yeah, my immune system was suppressing it. And so sometimes,
Yeah.
you have to work through that and then really work on your stress or your gut health or whatever it may be to then help everything bring it back together. And I think, your baseline, as you said, for maybe tolerating gluten is going to be completely different to your partner's baseline in tolerating gluten. So it's always trying to individualize and find out what foods help fuel you and the ones that aren't making you feel good, being okay with saying, all right, that's not for me. I don't need to eat that.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. That's interesting. You experienced that too with the eggs.
Yeah, well, that's it. I had testing done and everything during my pregnancy too, because I was trying to work out what was making me feel so sick. And yeah, through the allergy
Mhm.
testing, they were like, "Yep, you're allergic to eggs. You've obviously had it, but your immune system was suppressing
Yeah.
it. But now that you're pregnant, your immune system's all changing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely is interesting. Your body will change as you change,
Yep.
and sometimes it may change and not change back, but for me, I guess, obviously helping and working on my stress and my gut health and all the rest of it and calming down my immune system, that was definitely helpful as well.
Well, and I think that's exactly what you said. Like we're constantly evolving, and just because you figure it out right now doesn't mean it's not going to shift. And I think that's it's easier to be like, all right, here's my plan indefinitely. And if you're able to tune in to like the feedback your body gives you, you can kind of make those adjustments as you start seeing them come up. So I think that's really important for people to know that just because this works now or doesn't work now doesn't mean that is set in stone forever. It's kind of like genetics. So many people are like, oh, this is my genetic blueprint. I guess I'm either in the clear and don't have to take care of myself, or I'm destined to have a heart attack. And your environment and your choices and epigenetics that plays such a bigger role. And so sometimes people, you know, whether it's kind of, like, oh, I don't have to do anything, or I'm, like playing the victim, I can't do anything about it. That's not true. So I think it can empower you to just stay aware and continue to make choices based upon the awareness and the feedback our body's given us that will support your best energy or feeling, whatever it is the goal is.
Mm. And the lifestyle choices we make are, hugely impactful on our risk of developing diseases and illnesses and supporting our immune system and all of that. And I think that's where, as you said, a lot of people go, oh, heart attacks are in my family, so I'll have to go on medication and it's just good the way it's going to be. It's
Hmm.
like, no, there is a lot you can do. You do have the power. It's
Hmm.
just making those decisions and being really proactive about it to support your health.
Hmm. Totally.
Now, I already know you're a trained chef. So, what are some of your sort of favorite go-to meals that are anti-inflammatory that, are kind of on the repeat list at your place?
Hmm. So I did not grow up like knowing how to cook. And so just because now I'm trained doesn't mean people need to be trained to like get in the kitchen. And I think that's a big barrier to people mentally is that they think, oh, I need to have this training, or it needs to be my passion, or it needs to take forever. It's like too time consuming. I'm just not going to do it. My favorite things to do are quick, and it's not following a recipe. It's literally getting a protein. So whether it's steak or shrimp or salmon or chicken or you name the protein, and figuring out a way to like sear it on a cast iron or grill it on the grill, or finish roasting it in the oven. But finding the protein, cooking that. And the biggest thing is seasoning, because regardless of the goal, whether it's to shed fat, build muscle, some combination of it, it's going to require real food, because the processed stuff is going to contain those additives and chemicals and things that, any of those food sensitivity tests can pick up on. When you're reactive to those from a leaky gut, whatever it is, your body will hang on to excess everything like fluid, weight, all of that. And so when you can minimize or avoid the processed foods, immediately you're going to just shed a lot of that inflammatory response. So keeping with the real food, so the protein, and then finding veggies. I like to get a variety of colors, because our first part of digestion is the cephalic, or like with our eyes, our brain phase. And does it look appealing? That's already starting to get the digestive enzymes flowing, especially in the mouth, to start breaking down the carbohydrates. So we like colors, especially. I mean, I'm not going to say just kids, like adults like colors too. That's why if you look at, Food and Wine magazine, or some pictures of food, it's not gray and white that you're like, that looks awesome. It's the things that have some like shine to them or color. And so, all right, what colors can we incorporate? Because each color is going to represent a different nutrient profile that's all going to be supportive to different parts of our bodies. And so proteins, veggies, and then veggies are carbs, and you can have less starchy carbs, more starchy carbs. It kind of really thinking a lot of like proteins, veggies, some fat. It can be in the cooking fats like ghee, avocado, um, coconut oil. It can be in the finishing fat like olive oil, however you want to do that, in the meats, in the veggies, as like slices, like sliced avocado, but some sort of fat. And then Are you more physically active? Are you female, like on the back half of the cycle, and maybe need some more carbohydrates? Are you trying to lose body fat, especially around the waist? Maybe we don't want the starchy carbohydrates, but we need a little bit to keep the energy and the muscles repairing and recovering. So, kind of just, as far as go to, I like to think themes. So, do I want more Mediterranean? Do I want more Asian? Do I want more Mexican? So if you can think theme, okay, what's my protein? What's my veggie? How much of the carb in a real form do I want? Not like breads and pastas so much, but like vegetables or grains, like whole grains, or again, starchy carbohydrates if you're needing more muscle, like glycogen recovery. And so for breakfast, I like to think savory. So if people don't like eggs, so that's a common thing I hear is, I know egg is the savory, but I don't like eggs, or my stomach hurts after I eat them. I suggest, what about like a breakfast sausage, whether it's pork or it could be chicken, or you name the protein source you like, but it can be very quick. So you can do something like fall time, winter time when it's colder. You could shred, if you had like a food processor, some apple, carrots, and then cook some breakfast sausage. So, like a sage breakfast sausage or plain breakfast sausage. Literally three ingredients, super fast. You can make a bunch of extras. If you need more carbohydrates, you can add roasted potatoes or rice, sweet potatoes, winter squash, acorn squash, butternut squash to that to kind of fill in more. And if you need more of the proteins, keep it heavier on the meat side. For lunch, I like to think, well, for breakfast and lunch, I like to really think, well, what would I put into my dinner? Because it kind of should have that same intentionality versus like, to me, yogurts and cereals and things like that are more in that snack category and aren't going to keep you satisfied as long as like a savory meal. So I like, depending on the goal, of course, if, the goal is going to change how many meals you're going to want, how frequently you're eating. But, in general, most people are probably like around 3 meals. And so you want your meal to sustain you to the next meal and not need to fill in the gap with snacks, because snacks where the issue comes in, because most snacks are in a bag, box, or can. And that's where we get into issues. And if people can get their meals dialed so they feel really solid, positive, good energy to the next meal, they're more focused on whatever else they're doing, whether it's training, work, being with people. They're going to be more focused, but then they're also not going to be, like spending time or being distracted looking for something in the pantry and having the blood sugar dips. And so for lunch, some easy things could be chicken thighs, or if people do like tuna or some sort of, seafood, it can be cold, it can be warm. I like to, like I live in the mountains. It's cold here like all the time, like especially in the morning. So I like to think warm thermos, but if it's warmer out, then, obviously that's not the case. And then dinner, I mean, I love steak and chimichurri. Chimichurri is like some herbs. It can be parsley, like we'll throw cilantro into ours, but oregano, kind of herbs with some acid and fat. So acid being lemon or white wine, red wine vinegar, fat being olive oil. It's just like a nice little sauce that you can put with your steak, with your roasted veggies, with your potatoes. It really, eggs, it goes with everything. And it's pretty because it adds some green to something. And then roasted veggies, cruciferous veggies are awesome for supporting the liver, helping with the natural detoxification processes. So roasting cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, all these things can be pretty quick. Putting them on the pan like a cast iron, like let's say you did chicken thighs, you have a little of the juices there. When you take the chicken out to rest, then you cook the broccoli in it, squeeze some lemon, add some salt, maybe a little more ghee if you need some more fat, and they're very flavorful. And it takes less than 10 minutes. Like the chicken takes longer. Like seafood is a really fast meal. Shrimp, you sear a couple minutes on each side. Scallops, same way. Salmon, if you can go for the skin, that's where most of the omega 3s are. But you do that side down first, kind of salt it and then sear it and then flip it. Like seafood's so fast. It's the other proteins that take longer. So just kind of, thinking, all right, what's my protein? What's my like my spice profile? And then how do I want to fill it in with veggies, fats, carbs?
Mm. Which is like, it's pretty simple. Like you said, at the end of the day, you don't
Yeah.
need fancy ingredients. You don't need really long
Mm-mm.
recipes. You don't need any more depending on what protein you're cooking. You can do it pretty quick in like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think even Janie Oliver's got a whole cookbook that's like 15-minute meals. And like you said,
Yep.
if you can cook some up in a batch, like if you're doing breakfast sausage and
Hmm.
you want to cook up five or six and you've got the next few mornings done and dusted as well. I think it's just finding all
Well,
those small little ways that works for you and your lifestyle that's going to make it easier to then continue to follow through.
yep. 100%. And like those little sausage links, you can throw those in the oven while you're getting yourself ready. And it's like hands-on time is basically nothing. And like if I'm making squash, like, cut the or the acorn squash in half. That's roasting while the sausages are going. Throw some like fried eggs on that. Boom. Like you have like a really solid meal. It's protein forward. You're still getting carbohydrates. So your vegetables are a little bit starchy if you're needing that. And again, if you need to fill in the gaps and you do rice and those sort of grains, not everybody does. Some people, those are more inflammatory for. Other people do fine. Depends on the person. If I'm going to have rice, I'll make a big batch or a double batch and then, it's ready to go. I mean, my dogs will eat it if it's too much extra and we don't go through it. So it's faster to have it like cooked and just reheat it on the stove for 90 seconds than to be like, oh, I gotta wait 25 minutes for this thing to roast. So if you're roasting something, roast a few things, just save it in the fridge. And then when it's time to put breakfast together, it's savory. And then all of a sudden you're satisfied for 4 or 5 hours till lunch versus kind of riding on fumes, put your body in that stress state, which then, is going to affect the hormones and then like kind of tell your body, hang on to any fuel you get because we're not sure when we're getting it again. And that's where you can kind of get behind the eight ball with, your body feels unsafe, you're not getting your protein needs, and then your energy levels start dipping, and then when you're in a stress state, your body's like, oh, find something sweet. That's a really fast source of fuel. And then you start digging through the pantry or like coming up with this, oh, it's like a stevia sweetened thing, so it's fine. And then you're like missing the whole real food concept and trying to like cheat the system with these like fake alternatives, I guess.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of them out there in the supermarket that try to get
Hmm.
you in to buy them.
They're really good at marketing them too.
Yeah, exactly. And you pick up the packet and it'll say high in protein, low in
Yep.
carb. But when you actually turn over on the
Hmm.
back, it's like there's more protein in an egg than there is in this snack bar or
Oh yeah.
whatever it is. But no, they are very
Well,
good
the
at that.
protein thing's caught on. Yeah, now that you've got protein ice cream and protein chips and protein crackers, like they get, it used to be gluten. That was the buzzword because again, it was easier to say to help people distinguish real food from processed food by saying gluten free. Because before the processed things had gluten, because it would be cookies and bagels and breads and things like that. So if you said gluten free a long time ago, it was cutting out the processed food. So that was kind of the value of it for people who, weren't like concerned about the immune system side or weren't celiac. Now every processed fruit food has a gluten-free version. So people are like, "Oh, this is like a healthy sandwich because it's gluten-free." I'm like, "Well, let's look at your CGM. Like, what just happened? It just spiked way up." They're like, "Well, I thought it was okay because it's gluten-free." And that's the genius of the marketing is people think because it says gluten-free, it has that halo effect that, oh, this is actually a good thing for me. No, like if it looks like a brownie, smells like a brownie, tastes like a brownie, it's a freaking brownie, Same with bread and all the things. And now that's happening with protein, and you can just see it like, oh, everybody says protein forward, protein forward. Look it, I got some protein forward Doritos or ice cream, and this is good for me. And again, it might be better than a different alternative. And if you're like looking to thrive and really like excel, whether it's, as an athlete or like thrive through perimenopause transition, like you want the real deal. Like you don't want to like kind of shortcut things because it will catch up.
For sure. And if someone's listening in and being like, please don't take away my snacks because I really
Mhm.
want them, or, I do work out in the afternoon and I need something just to keep me going because then I have a slightly later dinner. What are some of the sort of snack things people can lean into?
Sure. I'm going to answer that two ways. One is what happened at the last meal that you're needing a snack? Is there just like a really long gap, like between like an early lunch and a later dinner? That's kind of a different scenario where, yeah, you probably do need a snack. Or is it a higher training volume? Yes, you probably do. If the goal is to put on muscle, you probably do. And a lot of times I see people kind of skimping on lunch, and that's why they need the afternoon snack, or they've caffeinated pretty hard early and that's dropping off and they're getting that afternoon dip. So a lot of times the need to snack is because blood sugar levels have dropped from not getting the right combination of, protein, fats, carbs for their body, or maybe not enough. Because I think that calories in, calories out equation still sits pretty heavy in people's minds, especially women who grew up, like we were talking about, like low fat, no fat era. That I hear still coming up quite a bit, even though if you're in this world, you're like, that's like very 25 years ago. It's still, very impressionable on people. So that's one thing. And if you're in that category, like, yeah, we need a snack, think savory. So I like, like olives, beef sticks, macadamia nuts, things that are not gonna like spike drop the blood sugar. Maybe if you need something crunchy, maybe like a green apple, and you could pair it with something. If people do nuts or seeds, they could do a butter. Everybody's different with how much of that they can pair. That's why ideally we're getting the right lunch to carry us through to dinner. And there are those times where in a jam, you didn't, you weren't able to have exactly what your body was asking for at lunch, and you still need something. So savory is kind of what I like to think. Or it could, people forget about this too. You can pack or like have, meal food around and just have a tiny bit of that for a snack. It doesn't have to be snacky food just because it's a snack. It could be the exact same thing you had for breakfast, just less of it. So you kind of like get a little like, bump in energy, but not so much you feel like, oh, it's gonna, throw off my dinner, but also not let you get so hungry that you eat too much at dinner and then feel too full and bloated afterwards. So you can always look at leftovers as a snack option.
And I think it's just changing your mindset a bit around what your snack needs to look like, because I think a lot of people, like you said, would think that my snack needs to look like a snack, like a bar
Yep.
or whatever. Whereas, yeah, a much healthier option and probably easier option is if you've already got some leftovers in the fridge, just have a smaller portion of that to see you through to the next meal.
Yep. Hmm.
Now, when it comes to exercise and then even potentially strength training, how does that affect our sort of levels of inflammation in the body? And when it comes to women, how important is this sort of exercise piece?
Hmm. So exercise is a stressor on the body, and that's exactly the point of doing it, is to give your body this stimulus or stressor to create this adaptive response. And part of the whole process of allowing that adaptive response to happen is to have appropriate recovery. And so I think this also plays into the calories in, calories out, is people heard when I do cardio, I burn more calories, which means I've earned more calories I can eat in any form. And so I guess cardio has its place. Um, and one of the purposes of it is for circulation to transport oxygen and nutrients around to all of our cells and, our tissues. And anything that can be good can also be done in excess and be too much, right? And so that's something I see um, when people start getting a little fearful of, ooh, that midsection weight's kind of creeping in, or those jeans don't fit how they used to, and they start kind of getting anxious about like, oh, I better ramp up the thing that we were told to do or that worked for me in my 20s and 30s and start doing more cardio. And that is inflammatory, especially, as the volume goes up. It doesn't mean don't do cardio. I don't want people to hear that, but like cardio can be walking. Like it doesn't need to be running all the time. And um, if you're training for something, there should be a specific plan behind it that does involve strength training, that does involve speed work. So it shouldn't just be a slow, steady state run every single day, because that's not part of a thought out plan. That's just adding more inflammation or chronic stress to the body. And so, where strength training can come in is building the lean muscle mass. And that's what really kind of burns, like keeps that, burn going at rest and while you're sleeping, and keeps, your body in a really good spot for, muscle mass to fat like ratio, and keeps you strong. It helps with your balance. It just allows you to do the things you want to do. And it really helps with body composition for people where that's the thing. The cardio can break down your muscle tissue, um, because again, depending on how we're fueled, if you're not fueled and you don't have a source of fuel to burn from, especially women will start burning their muscle for fuel, which is the exact opposite of the goal you want. That's where you get that skinny fat. Look fine in clothes, but like there's actually, you can be the right weight but over fat. And that's where that happens, is when you kind of do cardio only, skip the weight training. And with weight training, I think people can go heavier than they do. In, you don't need to do the same workout all the time. You shouldn't do the same workout all the time. There should be some varying, with the weights, the reps, the sets. Same with cardio though. Like, I think people get really comfortable in that middle zone of like, oh, it's a jog or whatever that jog equivalent is to them, and never go hard. And you want to go to the point sometimes, not too much, because again, that's too inflammatory, but everybody can handle a different load. But there should be like all out, short sprints, 10, 20, 15 seconds. And there can also be longer steady state. But I think so many people are like, oh, the in the moment of the long steady state is easier. So I'd rather just do that longer, which is more of that chronic stress impact on the body versus, like, Thursday's my interval day. Like I'm on, like the treadmill less than 10 minutes, and you're going so fast that you're like, my heart's pounding, like your oxygen, your blood's sending all the oxygen everywhere, all your muscle fibers are firing, and you're going all out, like everything's turned on, but then you're done like really fast. And that can be a great way to mix things up for people where it has a really good mitochondrial impact, metabolic impact, VO2 max impact, and it doesn't take much time. And the other stuff's good too. It's just like, I think people are like, all right, this is familiar. This fits in with that paradigm that I'm familiar with, calories in, calories out, more cardio, less food. And that doesn't work long term. Like that can work in the short term, that could work in your 20s. It sneaks up though, like, and that can create that state of chronic stress and contribute to that inflammation.
And especially as you said, as women hit like they're probably late 30s, early 40s, they start hitting perimenopause. Recovery just isn't as it used to be. Maybe injuries kind of
Mhm.
flare up from, a
Yep.
joint pain, from inflammation, tendon
Yes.
issues.
Yeah.
They're what I work with in the studio a lot. Then, I'm often saying to them, exact same thing, can we change up your training? Can we add in more intervals? Can we lean into the weight training? In the Pilates studio, I've got kettlebells and all the rest of it because I know how time poor some people are. And even though they may want to do the weight training, they're not going to add another session in. So if they're seeing me twice a week, then I am going to put at least some of that weight training in as much as I can. Because again, within the scope of Pilates, we do use weights, and I'm not a weight trainer as such, but I know, I've got enough knowledge and training behind me to progressively add load and things to exercises and that. But I 100% agree with everything you said. And being on that side of seeing people coming in with injuries and pain and that too, sometimes it is just a bit of a reflection on what you're currently doing. And again, looking to adapt, like we were
Yeah.
talking about with the diet.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a big thing you see with people when they have, whether you call it the inflammation, the under recovery, overtraining, there's a lot of different words that mean essentially the same thing. When you start seeing those chronic, like joint pains or injuries, that's a big sign that that's going on. And so, I love Pilates for that reason, to kind of add some of that like strength and stretch, like balance. It's like a great combo. It's like functional strength.
Yeah.
And I Yeah.
And I was just going to say, and that connection to the breath too. So, talking before about dropping back
Mm,
into that parasympathetic state, being present in your body, you have to be doing that in Pilates to be focusing on your breathing and
yes.
that too, which is another nice aspect of it, I think, that can really highlight, whether or not you're in this kind of sympathetic state and always resting, it always racing, or,
Yeah.
you can actually drop back into that parasympathetic state and slow down a little bit.
Yes. No, I love that about that too.
Now, before we wrap up, I always love to ask my guests that if there's one piece of health advice that you could give to our listeners that after listening to this podcast, they could go off and
Mhm.
instigate straight away, what would it be?
Ooh, it's tough because there's like a couple that come to mind. But if I just had to pick one, I would say um, for your crew, I'd say give yourself some space like on your calendar that's like actually blocked in where it's like nothing space, but it's like blocked out like a meeting because I think we're so used to being uber efficient and busy, productive, and a lot of people get their self-worth from that and forget to kind of block out themselves. And I think there's a lot of women, as you mentioned, is kind of your big, group who are giving to their parents, giving to their kids, giving to their career, maybe all of those, some combo of that. And you can't pour from an empty cup. And so when we're talking about the theme of inflammation, chronic stress being one of the huge contributors of that, because we also talked about how chronic stress contributes to that leaky gut. And just, remembering if giving is that important, which it is to many people, you're not going to give your best version of you if you've got an empty cup. So it's actually benefiting everybody around you by taking care of yourself first. And that can start with actually just saying no to some things and just kind of, bookending your day with like, start with 10 minutes on each side. Because sometimes we get into the zero sum game with time. We forget that the what we put into it energy wise, like with whether it's meditation or breathing, that actually produces so much more efficiency later that it saves more time and like generates more ideas and just like flow, that it's not a 10-minute for 10-minute swap. And I think some people are like, oh, I'm gonna lose 10 minutes here, so I'm just gonna cut that thing out because I can gain 10 minutes if I skip my qigong or my breath work or my me time, when that actually facilitates the whole rest of the day flowing a lot better. And then kind of having that better mental space, that dipping down into the parasympathetic nervous system so your body can physically recover, so your digestive enzymes can produce, so you can break down and actually absorb and assimilate the nutrients you're eating, because you can check the boxes, eat the right things, but if you're pooping it right out, it doesn't matter, right? So we need it like assimilated into our body. And so I think just, starting small and just, you know, claiming like 10 minutes unscheduled, unproductive, quote unquote unproductive. It's super productive, but like you're not like checking the box, like somehow putting you as the box item that gets to get checked. And I think that's so important, especially during this time, because those stress hormones, the inflammation all exacerbate the potential hormone imbalances, because your stress hormones are upstream of your sex hormones. So if your stress hormones are off, we know for sure your sex hormones are going to be off. And I can tell you your sleep and your digestion and all the other things are going to be off too.
Mm, I love that. And I think, like you said, sometimes at the end of the day, you get a little bit like, oh, I don't have time for that 10 minutes for myself, or I could just fit one more thing in. But, if you do, even at the end of the day, focus on that 10 minutes too, it then really helps you sleep better, which will then you'll wake up feeling more refreshed the next day. So you
Mm-hmm.
can do more the next day. So it's not only just at the start of the day, but the end of the day makes a huge difference as well.
Yep. 100%.
Now, before we wrap up, where can listeners reach out, connect with you, work with you, and find out more?
Yeah, my website is mypeak365.com. And that's actually my Instagram handle too. So those are the best places to do that. If people like resources, again, if you're like, oh, I could try some things in the kitchen, I do put recipes or like little videos of adults or kids making things, and just kind of some general like things to keep in mind, tips. And then if somebody wants to consider either working or finding what their next best resources, I will offer complimentary consultations just if people answer a few questions online. And not everybody's the right fit. So I want to make sure it's the right fit. And if not, I will help guide people to the next resources that would be a better fit. So that's always available too, because this is a very personal journey and you want it to be aligned well with the goals and where you're at. And it's just nice to kind of expand the network to know, all right, which options, which directions can I go? And I love to help people with that.
Amazing. Well, I will link that all up in the show notes too. So listeners, head across to the show notes to find those links. But Katie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I think this is a really important topic, and you're a wealth of information. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Kate.